Adam Schiff walked into the television studio early that morning. He felt good about the day ahead. This was just another interview, and he had done hundreds before. The bright lights of the studio made him squint as he entered. A young woman, named Kate, showed him to the makeup room where they would prepare him for the cameras. "Big show today, Congressman," Kate said with a smile. "Senator Kennedy will be joining you on the panel." Adam nodded. He had faced John Kennedy many times before in congressional hearings. Kennedy was known for his sharp questions and country-style way of talking that often hid how smart he really was. But Adam wasn't worried. He had prepared his talking points and felt ready for any questions about the new bill he was supporting. The makeup artist, an older woman named Betty, applied powder to his face. "Don't worry about the shine," she said. "These lights make everyone look sweaty if we don't use enough powder." While sitting in the chair, Adam checked his phone. His assistant had sent him some last-minute notes about polling numbers. The public seemed to support his position, which gave him more confidence. He texted back a quick thank you and put his phone away. In the hallway outside, he could hear voices. One of them was definitely Kennedy's Southern accent. Adam took a deep breath. There was something about Kennedy that always made him slightly nervous, though he would never admit it to anyone. The senator had a way of asking questions that seemed simple but were actually traps. After makeup, Kate led Adam to the green room where the other guests were waiting. John Kennedy was talking to the show's host, Nancy Miller. Nancy was new to political broadcasting but had quickly gained a reputation for tough but fair interviews. "Congressman Schiff," Kennedy said, extending his hand. "Good to see you again." Adam shook his hand firmly. "Senator Kennedy, I didn't know you'd be joining us today." Kennedy smiled. "Last-minute addition. The network thought it would make for a more balanced discussion." Nancy explained how the show would go. "We'll start with the topic of government transparency, then move on to the new infrastructure bill. Each of you will have 2 minutes for opening statements, then we'll have a more open discussion." Adam nodded, mentally reviewing his prepared remarks. This was standard procedure. Nothing to worry about. What Adam didn't notice was the folder Kennedy kept close to his side, or the way the senator's eyes followed him with unusual intensity. The production assistant, a young man named Greg, came to lead them to the set. "We're live in 5 minutes, folks." The studio set was arranged with 3 comfortable chairs angled toward each other. Bright lights hung overhead, and 3 cameras were positioned around the space. Behind the cameras, about 20 audience members sat quietly. Adam recognized a few faces, political journalists and some regular audience members who attended these kinds of shows. As they took their seats, microphones were clipped to their clothes. Adam straightened his tie and accepted a glass of water from a stagehand. 30 seconds, called the director. Nancy arranged her notes and smiled at both men. "Remember, gentlemen, this is a discussion, not a debate. We want to inform our viewers, not start a fight." Kennedy nodded politely. "Of course." The red lights on the cameras came on, and Nancy turned to face the center camera. "Good morning, and welcome to Capitol Conversations. I'm your host, Nancy Miller. Today we're discussing government transparency and accountability with Congressman Adam Schiff and Senator John Kennedy." The cameras switched to show both men as they smiled and nodded. Nancy continued. "Congressman Schiff, let's begin with you. You've been a vocal advocate for transparency in government. Would you share your thoughts on the current state of openness in Washington?" Adam leaned forward slightly, just as his media trainer had taught him. "Thank you, Nancy. Yes, transparency is essential to democracy. Citizens have the right to know what their government is doing. In my 20 years of public service, I've always fought to bring more openness to our processes. Just last month, I introduced legislation that would strengthen Freedom of Information Act requirements and make it easier for ordinary Americans to see how their tax dollars are being spent." Nancy nodded and turned to Kennedy. "Senator Kennedy, your response?" Kennedy adjusted his glasses and looked directly at the camera. "Well, Nancy, I agree that transparency is important. The American people deserve to know what's happening behind closed doors in Washington. But I think there's a difference between talking about transparency and actually being transparent. Adam felt a small knot form in his stomach. Kennedy's tone had shifted slightly from their cordial pre-show conversation. Kennedy continued, "And speaking of transparency, I'd like to discuss something that I think the viewers at home would find very interesting." Nancy looked slightly confused. This wasn't in the planned talking points. "Senator, we'll get to open discussion shortly, but I believe this is directly relevant to our topic," Kennedy interrupted gently but firmly. He reached down and opened the folder he had brought with him. Adam watched as Kennedy pulled out several papers. The knot in his stomach tightened. "Congressman Schiff has spoken beautifully about transparency," Kennedy said, his Louisiana accent becoming more pronounced as it often did when he was making an important point. "But I have here some documents that tell a different story." The camera cut to Adam, who maintained his composed expression despite his growing concern. Kennedy held up the first document. "This is a transcript from a closed-door committee meeting 3 years ago. In this meeting, Congressman Schiff told industry leaders one thing about regulation, while telling the public something completely different the very next day." Adam leaned forward. "Senator, if you're referring to the Energy Committee meeting, those discussions were confidential because they involved sensitive—" "I'm not finished, Congressman," Kennedy said calmly. "There's more." Nancy tried to regain control of the segment. "Perhaps we should—" but Kennedy continued, pulling out more papers. "I also have emails between the congressman and Peter Wilson, the lobbyist who later became the center of that bribery scandal last year. The timing of these communications raises serious questions." Adam felt his heart rate increasing. Peter Wilson had indeed been convicted of attempting to bribe officials, but Adam had only met with him as part of routine constituent meetings. The fact that Kennedy had these emails was troubling. How had he gotten them? "These allegations are completely false," Adam said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "My meetings with Mr. Wilson were fully documented and proper." "Then how do you explain this?" Kennedy asked, holding up another document. "This is a record of a wire transfer from Wilson's company to a PAC that later spent heavily in support of your campaign. The dates align perfectly with your meetings." The studio had fallen completely silent. Even Nancy seemed unsure how to proceed. Adam felt a flush of heat rise from his collar. "Senator, you're presenting incomplete information to create a false narrative. Those donations were properly disclosed and legal." Kennedy shook his head, slowly. "There's also the matter of your involvement in the Green Valley project. You publicly opposed it while privately your family trust was investing in companies that would benefit if the project failed." This was going too far. Adam felt his anger rising, but with it came a strange lightheadedness. "That is absolutely untrue. My family trust is in a blind trust precisely to avoid any conflicts of interest." The studio light suddenly seemed brighter, almost blinding. Adam reached for his water glass but knocked it over instead. Water spilled across the table. Nancy noticed something was wrong. "Are you all right, Congressman?" Adam tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. The room seemed to be spinning slightly. Kennedy's voice sounded distant now, though he was only a few feet away. "I have documentation for everything I've said," Kennedy was saying. "The American people deserve to know when their elected officials—" Adam tried to stand, to defend himself against these accusations, but his legs felt weak. "These claims are—" he began but couldn't finish his sentence. The lights were too bright, the room too hot. Nancy's voice cut through the fog in his mind. "We need to take a break. Someone help the congressman." The last thing Adam saw before everything went dark was Kennedy's face, his expression changing from accusation to concern as Adam began to collapse forward in his chair. Chaos erupted in the studio as Adam Schiff slumped forward in his chair. The cameras were quickly cut, but not before millions of viewers witnessed the congressman's collapse. Behind the scenes, people rushed to help. "Get a doctor!" Nancy shouted, jumping from her chair. She knelt beside Adam, who was now being lowered carefully to the floor by 2 stagehands. John Kennedy stood back, his face showing genuine concern despite the accusations he had just made. "Is he having a heart attack?" he asked, his southern drawl more pronounced due to stress. The studio's first aid officer, a man named Frank, pushed through the small crowd that had gathered. "Give him space, everyone back up," he ordered. Frank loosened Adam's tie and checked his pulse. His heart rate is rapid but steady. He's breathing. The show's producer, Donna Lewis, was already on the phone with emergency services. "Yes, we need an ambulance at Channel 8 Studios immediately. A man has collapsed during a live broadcast." Adam's eyes fluttered open. He looked confused and tried to sit up. "Stay down, sir," Frank said gently. "Help is coming." "The cameras?" Adam mumbled. "Are they still rolling?" "No, we're off air," Nancy assured him. "Just rest." Kennedy stood nearby, the folder of documents still in his hand. He seemed uncertain about what to do. The political attack that had seemed so important moments ago now felt insignificant in the face of a potential medical emergency. Adam's assistant, Paul Johnson, rushed into the studio. He had been watching the broadcast from the green room. "I've called his wife," Paul said, kneeling beside his boss. "What happened? Does he need his medication?" "What medication?" Frank asked quickly. "He has low blood pressure sometimes. There are pills in his briefcase." Paul retrieved a small pill bottle from Adam's bag. Frank read the label and nodded. "This might explain the collapse. Did he take his medication this morning?" Adam, still, lying on the floor but more alert now, shook his head weakly. "Forgot. Was rushed." The tension in the room eased slightly with this explanation. A medical issue seemed less dramatic than the political confrontation that had triggered it. Outside the studio, sirens announced the arrival of an ambulance. 2 paramedics entered with equipment and a stretcher. They moved efficiently, checking Adam's vital signs and asking him questions. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" the female paramedic asked. "Adam Schiff," he replied, his voice stronger now. "Do you know where you are?" "TV studio. I was doing an interview." The paramedics nodded to each other. "We're going to take you to the hospital for some tests," the male paramedic explained. "Likely just a vasovagal syncope, a fancy term for fainting due to stress. But we want to make sure." As they prepared to move Adam onto the stretcher, he suddenly seemed to remember what had happened before his collapse. His eyes found Kennedy, who stood awkwardly at the edge of the group. "Those allegations," Adam said, his voice now firm despite his position on the floor. "They're false. I need to respond." Nancy stepped forward. "Congressman, your health is more important right now. There will be time to address Senator Kennedy's claims later." The paramedics lifted Adam onto the stretcher. As they began to wheel him out, Kennedy approached. "Congressman," he said, his voice low, "I want you to know I never intended this to happen. I hope you recover quickly." Adam looked at him with a mixture of anger and confusion. "Where did you get those documents? Who gave them to you?" Kennedy hesitated. "We can discuss that when you're better." The paramedics continued moving, taking Adam out to the waiting ambulance. Paul followed close behind, already on the phone again, likely updating Adam's wife or staff. Back in the studio, the production team gathered around Donna, the producer. "What do we do now?" asked Greg, the young production assistant. "We're supposed to be live for another 40 minutes. Donna ran her fingers through her hair, thinking quickly. "Nancy, you and Senator Kennedy will continue. We'll address what happened, express concern for Congressman Schiff, and then pivot to discussing the transparency issues with just the senator." Nancy looked uncomfortable. "Shouldn't we cancel the rest of the show? This seems inappropriate." "The network won't want dead air," Donna replied. "And people will be tuning in now after word spreads about what happened. We need to provide context." Kennedy stepped forward. "I'm willing to continue if that helps. But I want to be clear that I hope the congressman recovers quickly. This was meant to be a political discussion, not a personal attack." Donna nodded. "We'll make that clear. Everyone back to positions. We go live again in 3 minutes." As the studio reset, Kennedy sat alone, looking at the folder in his hands. His face showed he was having second thoughts about his approach. He had planned to expose what he believed was hypocrisy, but now he wondered if he had gone too far. Outside the studio, news of Adam's collapse spread rapidly. Social media was already buzzing with video clips and commentary. Some users expressed concern for his health, while others speculated about what Kennedy had been about to reveal next. The ambulance carrying Adam made its way through morning traffic. Inside, the paramedics continued monitoring his vital signs while Paul sat nearby, fielding calls and messages on his phone. "The news is everywhere already," Paul told Adam. "Your collapse is trending on social media." Adam closed his eyes briefly. "What are they saying about Kennedy's accusations?" "Mixed reactions. Some are calling it a political hit job. Others are asking questions about the documents he showed." Adam struggled to sit up slightly on the stretcher. "We need to get ahead of this. Call Mary at the office. Tell her to prepare a statement denying everything. We need to question the authenticity of those documents." The female paramedic gently pushed him back down. "Sir, you need to stay calm and rest." "You don't understand," Adam said, his voice rising. "My career is at stake. Those allegations about Peter Wilson and the Green Valley Project, they could ruin me if people believe them." Paul looked concerned. "Are they true? Any of them?" Adam gave him a sharp look. "Of course not. Kennedy is twisting facts, taking things out of context. The Peter Wilson meetings were routine. All officials meet with lobbyists." Paul nodded, but something in his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "What about the wire transfer he mentioned? To the PAC?" "Legal campaign contributions," Adam said quickly. "Everything was disclosed properly." The ambulance arrived at Memorial Hospital. As the paramedics prepared to unload the stretcher, Adam grabbed Paul's arm. "We need to find out who gave Kennedy those documents," he said urgently. "Someone is trying to destroy me." Meanwhile, back at the studio, the show had resumed. Nancy looked solemnly at the camera. "Welcome back to Capitol Conversations. As many of you witnessed before the break, Congressman Adam Schiff experienced a medical episode during our discussion. We've received word that he is conscious and being transported to a local hospital for evaluation. Our thoughts are with him and his family." The camera panned to include Kennedy, who nodded seriously. "Senator Kennedy," Nancy continued, "before we return to our discussion on government transparency, would you like to address what happened?" Kennedy cleared his throat. "First and foremost, I want to express my sincere concern for Congressman Schiff. Political differences aside, his health and well-being are what matter most right now. I never intended to cause him any personal distress." "But you came prepared with those documents," Nancy pointed out. "You clearly planned to confront him today." Kennedy nodded slowly. "Yes, I did. I believe the issues I raised are important for the American people to understand, but I regret the timing and approach. There are more respectful ways to address these concerns." As Kennedy continued speaking on television, Adam was being wheeled into the emergency room. Doctors and nurses moved around him efficiently, checking his vitals and asking questions about his medical history. "Has this happened before?" a doctor named Dr. Allen asked. "No," Adam replied. "Never collapsed like this. Any history of heart problems, stroke?" "No, I'm in good health. It was just the stress of the moment." Dr. Allen made notes on his tablet. "We'll run some tests to be sure. Your blood pressure is still quite low." As the medical staff continued their work, Adam's mind raced with thoughts about damage control. The political fallout from this morning would be significant, regardless of his health. Kennedy had landed a serious blow, and Adam's collapse would only amplify public interest in the allegations. Adam stared at the ceiling of the emergency room, wondering how things had gone so wrong so quickly. Just hours ago, he had walked into the studio confident and prepared. Now he was lying in a hospital bed while his reputation potentially crumbled. One thought kept returning. Who had given Kennedy those documents? Who had access to his private emails and meeting records? Someone close to him had betrayed him, and he needed to find out who. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Adam Schiff lay in bed, staring at the television mounted on the wall. The morning news was replaying the moment of his collapse over and over. Each time, he watched himself grow pale, stumble over his words, and then slump forward in his chair. It was painful to watch, His wife, Carol, sat beside the bed, holding his hand. She had arrived at the hospital an hour ago, clearly worried despite Adam's assurances that he was fine. "You should turn that off," Carol said gently. "Watching it won't help." Adam shook his head. "I need to see what they're saying. I need to know how bad it is." On screen, a panel of political experts was discussing the incident. A woman with short gray hair was speaking. Senator Kennedy's timing raises questions. Was this a calculated attack designed to provoke exactly the reaction we saw? The camera cut to a man in a blue suit. Let's not forget that the allegations themselves are serious. If the documents Kennedy presented are authentic, Congressman Schiff has some explaining to do. Carol squeezed Adam's hand. "Those people don't know anything. They're just talking to fill airtime." Before Adam could respond, Dr. Allen entered the room. He carried a tablet and offered a reassuring smile. "Good news, Congressman. Your test results look normal, no signs of heart problems or stroke. As we suspected, you experienced a vasovagal syncope, essentially a fainting episode triggered by stress. Your blood pressure dropped suddenly, reducing blood flow to your brain." "So I can leave?" Adam asked hopefully. "I'd like to keep you for a few more hours for observation, but yes, you should be able to go home today. I recommend rest for the next 48 hours. No work, no stress." Adam almost laughed at that. No stress seemed impossible given the circumstances. Carol thanked the doctor, who left after promising to check back in an hour. As soon as he was gone, Adam reached for his phone. "What are you doing?" Carol asked. The doctor said rest. "I need to talk to my team. We have to respond to Kennedy's allegations quickly." Carol looked concerned but didn't try to stop him. Adam called his chief of staff, Dan Phillips. "Dan, I'm being released later today. We need to schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning." "Are you sure that's wise?" Dan asked. The doctor, "I don't have a choice," Adam interrupted. "Kennedy blindsided me with those accusations. Every hour we don't respond, people assume they're true." "We're already working on a statement," Dan assured him. "And we're looking into how Kennedy got those documents." "Any leads?" "Nothing solid yet. The emails he showed could have been accessed in several ways. We're checking for any security breaches in our systems." Adam lowered his voice, glancing at Carol, who was pretending not to listen. "What about the Green Valley Project documents? Those were more concerning." Dan was silent for a moment. "Those are troubling. Very few people had access to those files. It suggests the leak might be someone close to you." The thought made Adam's stomach tighten. He had always been careful about who he trusted with sensitive information. The idea that someone on his team might have betrayed him was painful. "Keep digging," Adam said finally, "and prepare talking points for tomorrow. We need to discredit these allegations completely." After hanging up, Adam noticed Carol watching him with a worried expression. "What?" he asked. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" she asked quietly. "About those documents Kennedy showed?" Adam felt a flash of anger. "You don't believe those accusations, do you? Your own husband?" Carol shook her head quickly. Of course I believe you. I just want to make sure we're prepared for whatever might come out next." Her words struck him oddly. "What do you mean, whatever might come out next? There's nothing else to come out because I've done nothing wrong." Carol nodded, but Adam thought he detected doubt in her eyes. This was what Kennedy had accomplished. With his ambush, sowing seeds of doubt even among those closest to him. Across town, Senator John Kennedy sat in his office, watching the same news coverage. His legislative director, Steve Garner, stood nearby. "The reaction is mixed," Steve said, scrolling through his phone. "Some people think you went too far, causing a man to collapse on live TV. Others are demanding answers about the allegations you raised." Kennedy sighed. "I didn't expect him to collapse. That wasn't the plan." "What was the plan?" Steve asked carefully. Kennedy gestured to the folder on his desk. "To present evidence, let him respond, and let the public decide. I wanted a debate, not a medical emergency. The source of these documents is asking if you plan to release more." Kennedy's eyes narrowed. "Tell them to be patient. This situation requires delicate handling now." I won't be seen as attacking a man in a hospital bed." Steve nodded and left the office. Kennedy turned back to the television, where Adam's face filled the screen. The news was showing photos from his earlier career, creating a timeline of his rise to power. Kennedy felt a twinge of regret about how things had unfolded. Politics was a tough business, but he had never intended to cause physical harm. His phone rang. The caller ID showed a name that made him hesitate. Lisa Morgan, Adam Schiff's deputy chief of staff. Kennedy answered cautiously. "Senator Kennedy, speaking." "We need to talk," Lisa said, her voice low and urgent. "Not over the phone. Can you meet me?" Kennedy was surprised. "Does Congressman Schiff know you're calling me?" "Of course not," she replied quickly. "I'm the one who sent you those documents." This revelation stunned Kennedy into silence for a moment. "Why would you betray your own boss?" "I have my reasons," Lisa said. "But there's more you should know. Things I didn't include in what I sent you. Meet me at Franklin Park in 1 hour near the fountain." She hung up before Kennedy could respond. He sat back in his chair, considering this unexpected development. Lisa Morgan had been with Schiff for years. Her betrayal would devastate him, personally and politically. Kennedy wondered what could have driven her to turn on her boss. Back at the hospital, Adam was sitting up in bed, his laptop open despite Carol's objections. He was reading the online coverage of the morning's events when Paul Johnson entered the room. "How are you feeling?" Paul asked. "Like my career is in jeopardy," Adam replied sharply. "Any updates?" Paul glanced at Carol, then back to Adam. "Can we speak privately?" Carol stood up, clearly annoyed. "I'll get some coffee." After she left, Paul closed the door and moved closer to the bed. "We may have identified the leak," he said quietly. Adam leaned forward eagerly. "Who?" "Lisa Morgan." The name hit Adam like a physical blow. Lisa had been with him for almost 8 years. She knew everything about his operation, had access to all his files, and was privy to his most private conversations. "That's impossible," Adam said, though even as he spoke, he was mentally reviewing recent interactions with Lisa, looking for signs of discontent or disloyalty. "She called in sick today," Paul continued, "but her keycard was used to access the file room last week, late at night when no one else was there, and she's been seen meeting with someone from Kennedy's staff twice in the past month." Adam closed his eyes briefly. "Find her. Now." "We're trying." "She's not answering her phone, and she's not at her apartment. Dan has a couple of staffers discreetly looking for her." Adam's mind raced with questions. Why would Lisa betray him? What had he done to deserve such disloyalty? And most importantly, what else did she know that she might share with Kennedy? "There's something else," Paul said hesitantly. "The press is reporting that you'll be released today. There are about 20 reporters gathered outside the hospital already." Adam rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. "We need to control this narrative. Help me up." "I'm going to make a brief statement before leaving." "The doctor said—" "I know what the doctor said," Adam snapped. "But this isn't about my health anymore. It's about my survival." Franklin Park was busy that afternoon. People walked dogs, children played, and office workers ate late lunches on benches. John Kennedy sat near the fountain, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes and sunglasses hiding his face. He didn't want to be recognized, especially not when meeting Lisa Morgan. He checked his watch. Lisa was 10 minutes late. Kennedy wondered if she had changed her mind. Just as he was about to leave, he spotted her walking quickly along the path. She wore a plain blue dress and carried a small handbag. Her eyes darted nervously from side to side as she approached. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting beside him, but not looking directly at him. "You took a big risk contacting me?" Kennedy replied. "Why did you do it? Why betray Schiff after all these years?" Lisa stared at the fountain for a long moment before answering. "I believed in him once. I thought he was different from other politicians. But I was wrong." "What changed?" Lisa opened her handbag and removed a small flash drive. "This contains more evidence. Things I didn't send you before." It's about the Green Valley Project, but it's worse than what you already know. Kennedy made no move to take the drive. Before I accept that, I need to understand your motivation. People will question your credibility when this comes out. They'll say you had a grudge, that you were fired or passed over for promotion. A bitter smile crossed Lisa's face. They might say those things, but the truth is simpler. 6 months ago, I discovered Adam had been lying, not just to the public, but to his staff, to Congress, to everyone. She paused, watching a group of children running around the fountain. The Green Valley Project was supposed to be an environmental initiative. Clean energy, green jobs, all the things Adam publicly supports. But privately, he worked to kill it, because his family stood to lose money if it succeeded. That's what the documents you sent me suggested, Kennedy said. But it's not conclusive. This is, Lisa replied, holding up the flash drive. Emails, meeting notes, recordings. Adam didn't just oppose the project. He actively sabotaged it while pretending to support it. People lost jobs, a community lost. Hope, all because of his lies. Kennedy studied her face. This seems personal for you. Lisa's expression hardened. My brother lost everything because of the Green Valley failure. His construction company had hired 50 new workers for the project. When it fell apart, he had to let them all go. Eventually, he lost his business. Last month, he lost his house. Now Kennedy understood. This wasn't just political for Lisa. It was family. I want people to know the truth, she continued. Adam Schiff isn't who he pretends to be. Kennedy finally took the flash drive. If I use this, your career in politics is over. You understand that? Lisa nodded. Some things matter more than careers. As Lisa left the park, Kennedy sat thinking about what he should do next. The flash drive in his pocket felt heavy with responsibility. Using its contents would destroy Adam Schiff, but it would also hurt many others connected to him. Politics was a rough business, but Kennedy had to consider the human cost. Meanwhile, Adam Schiff stood before a small group of reporters outside Memorial Hospital. He looked pale, but determined. Carol stood beside him, concern visible on her face. Thank you all for coming, Adam began, his voice stronger than he felt. As you know, I experienced a medical episode during this morning's interview. The doctors have assured me it was nothing serious, just a temporary drop in blood pressure caused by stress. The reporters called out questions, but Adam raised his hand for silence. Regarding Senator Kennedy's allegations, I want to be absolutely clear. They are false. The documents he presented have been taken out of context or manipulated to create a misleading impression. I have always conducted myself with integrity, both in public and in private. A reporter shouted, "What about the Green Valley Project? Did your family have financial interests that conflicted with your public position?" Adam kept his expression neutral despite the flash of anger he felt. My family's investments are in a blind trust, specifically to avoid any conflicts of interest. I have no control over or knowledge of those investments. My position on Green Valley was based solely on what I believed was best for my constituents and the country. Another reporter called out, "Have you spoken with Senator Kennedy since the incident?" "No, I have not. But I hope in the future, Senator, Kennedy will approach me directly with any concerns rather than ambushing me on live television." A final question came from the back of the group. "Congressman, is it true that your Deputy Chief of Staff, Lisa Morgan, has gone missing?" This question caught Adam off guard. He hadn't expected the news about Lisa to spread so quickly. He recovered quickly. "Ms. Morgan called in sick today, which is not unusual. I wouldn't characterize that as missing. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to follow doctor's orders and get some rest." Adam and Carol walked to their waiting car, ignoring further questions from the reporters. Once inside with the doors closed, Adam's composure cracked. "How did they know about Lisa?" he demanded, turning to Paul, who sat in the front passenger seat. Paul looked uncomfortable. "It leaked somehow. We're still trying to locate her, but no success yet." "She knows everything, Paul. Every meeting, every call, every decision for the past 8 years. Carol placed her hand on Adam's arm. "You need to calm down. Your blood pressure..." My blood pressure is the least of my concerns right now, Adam snapped, immediately regretting his tone. I'm sorry. This is a nightmare. The car pulled away from the hospital, reporters still shouting questions, and cameras flashing. Adam's phone rang. It was Dan Phillips. Dan, tell me you have good news. Not exactly, Dan replied, his voice tense. We found Lisa's computer at the office. She wiped it clean before she left. And there's something else. Security footage shows her making copies of files from the restricted cabinet 2 days ago. The Green Valley files. Adam closed his eyes, feeling sick. Kennedy mentioned Green Valley, specifically in the interview. That can't be a coincidence. It gets worse, Dan continued. A reporter from the Washington Post just called asking for comment on a story they're running tomorrow. They claim to have evidence that you actively worked to undermine the Green Valley project while publicly supporting it. The car seemed to close in around Adam. He struggled to breathe normally. What evidence? They wouldn't say exactly, but they mentioned recordings of phone calls. Adam's mind raced back to conversations he'd had about Green Valley. Had he said anything that could be misinterpreted, or worse, had he said something damning that he'd forgotten about? Kill the story, he told Dan. Call in favors, threaten legal action, whatever it takes. I'll try, but if they have solid evidence, just do it. Adam ended the call and stared out the window as the city passed by. Carol watched him with growing concern. Adam, what's going on? What's this about Green Valley? He couldn't meet her eyes. It's complicated. Political maneuvering that looks bad out of context. Is that all it is? She pressed. Because you seem terrified, not just angry. Before Adam could answer, his phone rang again. The caller ID showed an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. Hello? Congressman Schiff. It was John Kennedy's voice. I think we need to talk. Adam's grip tightened on the phone. I have nothing to say to you, Senator. I just met with Lisa Morgan, Kennedy said calmly. She gave me some very interesting information. I thought you might want to discuss it before I decide what to do with it. Adam felt the blood drain from his face. Where and when? My office. 1 hour. The call ended. Adam sat in silence, his mind spinning with possibilities, none of them good. Who was that? Carol asked. Kennedy, Adam replied quietly. He has Lisa, and whatever she's told him, it could end everything. Senator John Kennedy's office was on the 3rd floor of the Russell Senate Office building. The walls were decorated with photos of Louisiana landscapes and framed newspaper articles about Kennedy's career. Adam Schiff sat stiffly in a leather chair, facing Kennedy across a large wooden desk. They were alone in the room, Kennedy having dismissed his staff for this private meeting. Thank you for coming, Kennedy said, his southern accent less pronounced than usual, as if he was making an effort to speak more formally. You didn't give me much choice, Adam replied coldly. His face was still pale from his hospital stay, and dark circles had formed under his eyes. Where is Lisa? Kennedy shook his head. I don't know her current location. She gave me information and left. I have no control over her movements. Adam didn't believe him but decided not to argue the point. What exactly did she give you? Kennedy opened a drawer and removed the flash drive Lisa had provided. He placed it on the desk between them. Evidence about the Green Valley project, emails, meeting notes, and apparently some recorded conversations. Adam stared at the small device that could destroy his career and possibly lead to criminal charges. Have you reviewed the contents? Not yet, Kennedy admitted. I wanted to speak with you first. This surprised Adam. He had expected Kennedy to be eager to use this new ammunition against him. Why? Kennedy leaned back in his chair, studying Adam's face. Politics is a tough business. We fight hard because we believe in different visions for this country. But there should be lines we don't cross. That's rich coming from the man who ambushed me on national television, Adam said bitterly. Fair point, Kennedy acknowledged. My approach was wrong. I regret that. The two men sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Finally, Kennedy spoke again. Lisa told me why she did this. Her brother lost his business because of Green Valley's failure. She believes you deliberately sabotaged the project for personal gain while publicly supporting it. Adam closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something had changed in his expression. The defensive anger was replaced by weariness. It wasn't that simple. It never is, Kennedy said quietly. So tell me your version. Adam hadn't planned to be honest with Kennedy. He had come prepared to deny everything, to claim the evidence was fabricated, to threaten legal action. But something in Kennedy's tone, a lack of judgment perhaps, made him reconsider. Green Valley started as a good idea, Adam began slowly. Clean energy jobs for a struggling community, I supported it genuinely. But then I learned the technology they planned to use had serious flaws. There were safety concerns that weren't being addressed. Kennedy listened without interrupting. I raised these issues privately with the project leaders, Adam continued. They assured me everything would be fixed. But then I discovered they were cutting corners to save money. If the project had continued as planned, there could have been serious safety issues, maybe even deaths. So you worked against it, Kennedy stated. Adam nodded reluctantly. Yes, but I couldn't go public with my concerns without causing panic and tanking the project immediately. I hoped to force changes from behind the scenes to make it safer before supporting it publicly again. And your family's investments? Adam sighed deeply. That part is true. The blind trust isn't completely blind. I get quarterly reports with general information. I knew my family had investments that would be negatively affected by Green Valley, but that wasn't why I opposed it. Kennedy tapped his fingers on the desk, thinking. The recordings Lisa mentioned, what might be on them? Adam's expression darkened. Probably conversations with my financial advisor. We discussed the impact Green Valley might have on my investments. If those conversations are heard out of context, they would sound damning, Kennedy finished for him. Yes. Kennedy picked up the flash drive and turned it over in his hand. So we have two stories here. Lisa's version, you killed a good project for personal profit. Your version, you had legitimate safety concerns but made the mistake of also considering your financial interests. The truth is usually somewhere in the middle, Adam said quietly. Kennedy nodded slowly. The question is, what happens now? Outside, Kennedy's office reporters had gathered. Word had spread that Adam Schiff had entered the building. Speculation was running wild about what this meeting might mean after the morning's dramatic events. Inside, the two political opponents regarded each other with new understanding. You could destroy me with this, Adam said, gesturing to the flash drive. Your political career would benefit. My party would lose a senior member. Your agenda would advance. All true, Kennedy acknowledged. But at what cost? Adam looked surprised. What do you mean? Kennedy stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Capitol dome in the distance. I came to Washington to fight for certain principles. But I didn't come here to destroy people. Using this information would hurt more than just you. It would hurt your family, your staff, the people who believe in you. Since when does that matter in politics? Adam asked, a hint of bitterness in his voice. Kennedy turned back to face him. Maybe it should matter more than it does. Adam didn't know how to respond. He had expected a confrontation, not this philosophical discussion. What are you suggesting? A different approach, Kennedy said. One that serves the public interest without unnecessary destruction. He outlined his proposal. The Green Valley project would be revived, with Adam publicly acknowledging the safety concerns and working transparently to address them. An independent review would be conducted to ensure all issues were properly resolved. Adam would recuse himself from any votes directly affecting his family's investments and would make his financial disclosures more transparent. And the evidence? Adam asked, nodding toward the flash drive. It stays private unless you fail to follow through, Kennedy said simply. Adam considered the offer. It wasn't perfect. His reputation would still take a hit when he acknowledged his concerns about Green Valley. There would be questions about why he hadn't been more transparent from the beginning, but it was far better than the alternative. "Why would you do this?" Adam asked, genuinely puzzled. "You had me cornered." Kennedy smiled slightly. "Maybe I'm getting old, or maybe I'm remembering why I got into politics in the first place. It wasn't to win at all costs." Adam stood and extended his hand. "I accept your terms." Kennedy shook his hand firmly. "We'll announce the revival of Green Valley together, a bipartisan effort." "What about Lisa?" Adam asked. "She won't be happy about this." "Leave Lisa to me," Kennedy said. "Her brother's company can be part of the revived project. That's what she really wants, to make things right for her family." As Adam prepared to leave, Kennedy had one final question. "Do you think we can do better, all of us in Washington?" Adam paused at the door. "I don't know, but maybe this is a start." The next day, Adam Schiff and John Kennedy stood together at a press conference. Reporters were stunned by this unexpected alliance between political opponents. As cameras flashed and questions flew, the two men announced the revival of the Green Valley Project as a bipartisan initiative focused on safety, jobs, and clean energy. No one mentioned the flash drive that now sat locked in Kennedy's desk drawer. No one knew about the private conversation that had led to this moment. The public saw only two politicians setting aside their differences for the common good. Behind the scenes, Lisa Morgan watched the press conference on television. Her phone rang. It was Kennedy. "You got what you wanted," he told her. "Your brother's company will be part of the new project." "But Schiff doesn't pay for what he did," she protested. "Sometimes justice takes different forms," Kennedy replied. "The project will succeed. Your brother will recover, and Schiff will work under public scrutiny from now on." After the press conference, Adam returned to his office. Carol was waiting for him. "You look better," she said, studying his face. "I feel better," he admitted, "like a weight has been lifted." "Will you tell me what really happened with Kennedy?" Adam took her hand. "Yes, all of it. No more secrets." As they left the office together, Adam glanced back at the Capitol dome rising against the blue sky. Politics would always be a tough business, but maybe, just maybe, it could also be something more.